2018, Navajo Reservation, Arizona. A guy named Michael steps out of his pickup to check a strange sound he heard on the side of a deserted road. It was a whistle. A simple melodic whistle that seemed to answer his own whistling from a few minutes earlier. Michael turns on his flashlight and points the beam into the darkness. There, on the border between light and shadow, stands a figure. A human. At least that's how it appears at first glance. The figure stands completely motionless, arms hanging too low along its body, head tilted at an angle impossible for a human neck, and the eyes reflect the flashlight in a way human eyes shouldn't. And then this figure begins moving toward him. Not walking, moving, as if someone who had never seen how people walk was trying to imitate it. Michael threw himself into the car. He pressed the gas pedal until the speedometer needle hit 120 miles per hour. But the most terrifying thing happened when he looked in the rearview mirror. The creature was running after him, on all fours, and it wasn't falling behind. This story is just one of thousands of similar accounts that local residents pass to each other in whispers. Because in Navajo reservations there's one unspoken rule. Some things are better left unsaid, especially skinwalkers. And today we'll dive into one of the most terrifying and mysterious legends of Native American peoples. We'll examine who skinwalkers are and why people are afraid to talk about them, even in the 21st century, and why a simple whistle in a nighttime forest might cost you far more than you think. But most importantly, we'll discuss the phenomenon scientists call the uncanny valley effect. That strange, primal terror that grips us when we see something that looks almost human, but not quite. And I promise you, after this video, you'll never look at a nighttime forest the same way again. To understand what a skinwalker is, we first need to understand the people who created these legends, or, more precisely, the people who encountered these creatures and survived to tell the tale. The Navajo are one of the largest Native American peoples in North America. Their reservation covers territory the size of a small European country, stretching across the junction of 4 states: Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. This is a land of red canyons, endless deserts, and forests, where nothing is heard at night except the wind, and also, sometimes, whistling. In the Navajo language, a skinwalker is called naaldlooshii, which literally translates as one who walks on all fours. Pay attention. Not one who transforms into an animal. Not one who changes form. Specifically, one who walks on all fours. Why is this important? Because it describes not so much the ability to transform, but rather a way of moving, a way that looks wrong, unnatural. According to traditional Navajo beliefs, skinwalkers are not demons or spirits in the classical sense. They are humans. More precisely, they are former humans, shamans who chose the dark path. You see, the Navajo have a complex system of magical practices. There are healers, those who use power for good. They're called hatali, and they conduct healing ceremonies that can last 9 days. And there are those who decided to use power differently. To become a skinwalker, a person must commit the most terrible taboo, the most unforgivable crime. They must kill a close blood relative, a brother, a sister, a parent, a child. This isn't just murder. It's the conscious destruction of sacred bonds that connect family and tribe. It's an act of such deep betrayal that it literally tears apart the human essence of the killer and opens the door for something else. After this ritual, the skinwalker gains the ability to wear animal skins, hence the English name skinwalker, and assume their form: wolf, coyote, raven, owl, any animal whose skin they wear. But here's the most horrifying part. A skinwalker can also wear human skin, and then they become indistinguishable from that person whose skin they wear, almost indistinguishable, because there's always something wrong, something that gives them away, a detail you notice out of the corner of your eye, a detail that makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. But we'll talk more about that in Chapter 3. For now, it's important to understand something else. The Navajo don't just believe in skinwalkers. They're afraid even to talk about them. When researchers and journalists try to question local residents about these creatures, they often meet a wall of silence. People literally refuse to pronounce the word aloud. Why? Because according to belief, talking about a skinwalker means attracting its attention. It's like sending an invitation into the darkness, and the darkness might answer. One anthropologist who worked on the reservation in the 90s told how an elderly Navajo woman agreed to talk about skinwalkers only in a locked room during the day in whispers, and even then she constantly glanced at the windows. They hear, she said. They always hear when people talk about them. And here we come to the first important rule, a rule that every child in the reservation knows. Never whistle at night. Why? Because whistling is how skinwalkers find their victims. They imitate sounds, whistling, crying, voices of familiar people. If you whistle in a nighttime forest, you're essentially shouting, "I'm here, come and get me." And if you hear a whistle in response, leave. Don't look back. Don't answer. Just leave. But what if you're already too late? In the Internet era, stories about encounters with skinwalkers have spread beyond the reservations. On Reddit, in threads like r skinwalkers and r naaldlooshii, thousands of people share their experiences. And while many of these stories are certainly fictional, there are some among them that are impossible to simply dismiss. Case 1. Route 666. Yes, you heard right. Until 2003, the main highway passing through the Navajo reservation was actually called Highway 666. Later, it was renamed Highway 491, but locals still call it by its old name and consider it cursed. In 1997, a family from Albuquerque was returning home after visiting relatives. It was around 2 in the morning. The road was empty, not a single car for many miles around. The father, let's call him John, was driving. His wife was dozing in the front seat. 2 children were sleeping in the back. John later said he first noticed movement to the right of the road. Something was running parallel to the car. He thought it was a coyote or dog and paid no attention. But then this something started getting closer, and John realized it was running at 70 miles per hour. No animal can run that fast. He pressed the accelerator. 80 miles per hour. 90. The creature wasn't falling behind. And then it ran out onto the road directly in front of the car, and John saw it in the headlights for the first time. It looked like a human, like a very thin, unnaturally elongated human running on all fours. but running wrong, elbows and knees bending the wrong way. John slammed the brakes. The car skidded. He was certain he was about to hit this creature. But when the car stopped, the road was empty. His wife woke from the screeching brakes. The children were crying. John sat gripping the steering wheel, unable to utter a word. They spent the rest of the night at a gas station, refusing to continue until dawn. Case 2. Grandmother's Voice. This story was told by a girl who grew up on the reservation. Let's call her Mary. When Mary was 12 years old, her grandmother became seriously ill. The family gathered at the house to be near her in her final days. Grandmother lay in a bedroom on the first floor, while Mary slept upstairs in the guest room. One night Mary woke to the sound of a voice. It was her grandmother's voice, coming from outside. "Mary," grandmother called. "Mary, come out. I need your help." Mary got up and went to the window. Below, at the edge of the yard, stood a figure in grandmother's white nightgown. The girl was about to go downstairs when she noticed something strange. The figure stood completely motionless, absolutely still. Even the hair wasn't moving, though it was a very windy night. And then Mary remembered. Grandmother hadn't gotten out of bed for 3 days. She was too weak even to sit up. How could she have gone outside? Mary screamed. Her mother came running at her cry. When they looked out the window together, the yard was empty, and grandmother was peacefully sleeping in her bed. She died the next morning, and Mary is still certain something stood there in the yard, trying to lure her out of the house. Case 3, Skinwalker Ranch. This is perhaps the most famous and well-documented case. In 1994, the Sherman family bought a ranch in Utah, not far from the reservation. They didn't know that locals called this place cursed. Over the 2 years spent at the ranch, the Shermans witnessed hundreds of inexplicable phenomena: UFOs, poltergeist activity, cattle disappearing under mysterious circumstances. But the most terrifying were the encounters with creatures. One night the head of the family saw a huge wolf in the pasture. The wolf was unnaturally large, the size of a horse. It approached the fence and just stood there, looking at the house. Sherman shot at it with his rifle. He hit it. The wolf didn't even flinch. Sherman fired again and again. The wolf continued standing, and then it turned and slowly walked away. Tracks remained in the snow, but they ended in the middle of the field, as if the animal had simply vanished. The Shermans sold the ranch in 1996. It was bought by billionaire Robert Bigelow, who funded scientific research into paranormal phenomena. A team of scientists from the National Institute for Discovery Science worked at the ranch. What did they find? Officially, nothing concrete. But information leaks tell a different story. About instrument readings that can't be explained. About recordings that were classified. In 2020, the ranch was purchased by a group of investors who launched a documentary series about its investigation. The series is still ongoing, and with each season, there are more questions than answers. But here's what's interesting. Local Navajo call this place naaldlooshii Bidziel, place of Skinwalker power, and they warned the Shermans before they even moved in. The Shermans didn't listen. That was a mistake. Now let's talk about what makes Skinwalker stories truly terrifying. About why they scare us on some primal, deep level that we can't even fully comprehend. I'm talking about the uncanny valley effect. This term was introduced by Japanese roboticist Masahiro Mori in 1970. He noticed a strange pattern. The more a robot resembles a human, the more sympathy it evokes. But only up to a certain point. When the similarity becomes almost complete but not absolute, sympathy abruptly turns to revulsion and fear. This is called the dip in the uncanny valley. We look at something that looks like a human but behaves wrong, and our brain screams, danger. Evolutionary psychologists believe this reaction is a defense mechanism. For millions of years, our ancestors faced threats that disguised themselves as safe. Sick relatives who could spread infection, predators that stalked, strangers who pretended to be friends. Our brain learned to notice the smallest inconsistencies, wrong gait, strange gaze, unnatural movements. And when we see something that falls into the uncanny valley, this ancient mechanism activates at full power. Now remember the descriptions of skinwalkers. The creature looked like a human, but moved wrong. Its arms were too long. It was smiling, but the eyes weren't smiling. The head turned too far. It tried to run like a human, but the knees bent backward. Every description is pure, concentrated, uncanny valley effect, and that's why these stories are so frightening. Not because a skinwalker is a scary monster with fangs and claws. We can comprehend a monster. A monster is other, non-human, and our brain knows how to react to that. But a skinwalker is almost human, almost familiar, almost family. Almost. Imagine you're walking through the forest at night. Ahead you see your mother calling you home. You recognize her voice. You recognize her clothes. You recognize her figure. But something is wrong. She's standing too still. She doesn't blink. Her smile is too wide. And when she starts walking toward you, her legs move wrong. You can't say exactly what's wrong, but every cell in your body is screaming at you to run. That's what an encounter with a skinwalker is. Not fear of the unknown, fear of what pretends to be known. And that's what makes them such effective hunters, because our instinct is to trust what looks familiar, to go toward mother's voice, to help a friend calling for help. Skinwalkers exploit this trust. They're perfect predators who use our humanity against us. In Navajo legends, it's said that an experienced skinwalker can imitate any person's voice. It can look like your brother, your father, your child, but it can never imitate perfectly. There will always be something wrong. Maybe the eyes will be too empty. Maybe the movements will be too smooth, or conversely, too jerky. Maybe the shadow will fall the wrong way, or the reflection in the mirror will lag by a fraction of a second. Details we notice out of the corner of our eye. Details our conscious mind refuses to acknowledge, but our subconscious sees immediately. And this brings us to the next question. How do you protect yourself from something that can look like anyone? In Navajo culture, there exists an entire set of rules regarding skinwalkers. Some of them sound like superstition, others like common sense, but local residents treat them with absolute seriousness. Let's examine the most important ones. Rule 1. Don't whistle at night. We've already discussed this, but let me explain in more detail. Whistling isn't just a sound. In Navajo understanding, it's an invitation, a way of saying, I'm here, I'm alone, come. Skinwalkers communicate with each other through whistling. They use it to coordinate hunting. If you whistle at night, you might attract their attention. But what's even more dangerous, you might get an answer. And if you hear a whistle in response, the rule is simple. Don't answer. Don't look in the direction of the sound. Go home, quickly, but don't run. Running attracts predators. Rule 2. Don't look it in the eyes. According to beliefs, a skinwalker can take control over you if you look it in the eyes. Not physical control, but something like hypnosis. You freeze, you can't move, you can't scream. And it approaches. Locals advise, if you see something suspicious, look past it, to the side, at the ground, anywhere but the eyes. Rule 3. Don't speak its name. As we've already discussed, naming a skinwalker means attracting its attention. This is precisely why Navajo use euphemisms and descriptive phrases instead of the direct name. This rule is so serious that many Navajo refuse to discuss this topic with outsiders. Not because they want to keep secrets, but because they fear the consequences. Rule 4. Protect your home. Skinwalkers cannot enter a home without an invitation. At least that's what tradition says. But they can imitate the voices of your loved ones to lure you outside. Therefore the rule, if someone calls you at night, don't go out immediately. Check if everyone is home. Call that person. Make sure it's really them. Many families on the reservation have code words, phrases known only to family members. If Mom at the door can't say the code word, the door stays closed. Rule 5. Ash and juniper. Traditional Navajo protective means include white ash, which is applied to the skin, and juniper smoke. It's believed that these substances repel skinwalkers, or at least prevent them from approaching. Some families still conduct protective ceremonies when they sense a skinwalker is near. These ceremonies can last all night and include songs, prayers, and ritual actions. Rule 6. Don't pick up strange objects. Skinwalkers, according to legends, can leave cursed objects, bones, feathers, bundles of hair. If you find something like this near your home, don't touch it with bare hands. Don't bring it inside. Best of all, burn it on the spot. And finally, Rule 7. If you wound it, it will come for you. This is perhaps the most frightening rule. According to beliefs, if you've wounded a skinwalker, shot it, cut it, anything, it will remember you, and it will come for revenge. Not immediately, maybe in days, maybe in weeks, but it will come. Therefore, the Navajo don't recommend attacking a skinwalker unless you're absolutely certain you can kill it. And killing it, according to legends, can only be done one way, with a bullet or blade coated in white ash. Sounds like rules from a horror movie, perhaps, but for people who grew up with these stories, this isn't entertainment. It's a survival guide. And here's the question we can't help but ask. Why are these rules so persistent? Why in the 21st century, in the era of smartphones and satellite internet, do people continue to believe in them? Skeptics, of course, have their own explanation for the skinwalker phenomenon. Psychologists talk about pareidolia, our brain's ability to see familiar images where there are none. We see faces in clouds, figures in shadows, human silhouettes in tangles of branches. At night, in a state of fear and tension, this ability intensifies many times over. We see what we're afraid to see. Biologists point to known animals, wolves, mountain lions, bears, under conditions of poor visibility and stress. They're easy to mistake for something supernatural. Anthropologists explain Skinwalker legends as a social mechanism, a way to control community members' behavior. Don't go into the forest at night, reasonable advice in wild territory. Don't trust strangers who look strange, a useful instinct in tribal society. And all of this makes sense, rational, logical sense. But how do you explain hundreds of independent testimonies from people who couldn't possibly have known about each other's accounts? How do you explain tracks that end in the middle of a field? How do you explain surveillance camera recordings that show something? On YouTube and in paranormal researchers' archives, there are dozens of videos that are very difficult to explain. Figures that move unnaturally. Creatures that appear for a fraction of a second and disappear. Eyes that glow in the darkness where no animals should be. You could say it's all fakes. And many of them certainly are fakes. The internet is full of them. But all of them? There's an old rule in journalism. If 10 people tell you they saw an elephant on a Moscow street, you can laugh. If 100 people say the same thing, it's worth looking out the window. About skinwalkers, not 10 or 100 people speak. Thousands speak about them, for centuries, in a culture that teaches silence about it. Why? I'm not claiming skinwalkers are real. I'm not a scientist, and this isn't a scientific investigation. I'm a storyteller. I collect stories and share them with you, but I'll say this. The world is bigger than we think, darker, stranger, and in its corners, in the shadows of ancient forests and on deserted roads, perhaps there's something we don't yet understand. The Navajo have lived on these lands for thousands of years. They know this land better than any scientist with instruments. And if they say it's better not to whistle at night, maybe we should listen? The internet changed everything, including stories about skinwalkers. Before, these tales were passed from mouth to mouth, from grandmothers to grandchildren, in closed communities. Now they're available to millions of people around the world. And this spawned an interesting phenomenon. People began seeing skinwalkers where they'd never been before, in Europe, in Asia, in Australia. A creature traditionally connected only to the American Southwest suddenly became global. Skeptics say this proves the psychological nature of the phenomenon. People hear stories, get scared, and their brains begin interpreting any strange events through the lens of skinwalkers. But there's another point of view. Perhaps the Navajo were simply the first to give a name to something that always existed. Every culture in the world has legends about shapeshifters, about creatures that change form, about predators that pretend to be human. Werewolves in Europe, kitsune in Japan, berserkers among Scandinavians. Shapeshifters among Slavs, different names, different cultures, the same idea. What if it's not a coincidence? What if people around the world, independently of each other, encountered the same phenomenon, and each culture described it through its own lens, but the essence remained the same? This is speculation, of course, but beautiful speculation. And it makes you wonder, when you walk down a dark street at night and feel that someone is watching you from the darkness. What if you're right? I began this video with the story of Michael, who stopped on an empty road to check a strange whistle. Let me finish it. Michael drove to town. He didn't stop until the sun rose over the horizon. He didn't tell anyone about what he saw for an entire year. And then he found other people online with similar experiences, dozens, hundreds of accounts that sounded like his own. And he realized he wasn't crazy, or at least that he wasn't alone. Today Michael lives far from the reservation. He moved to the East Coast. He says he feels safe, almost, because sometimes late at night he hears whistling outside his apartment window on the 12th floor, and he never goes to the window to look. That concludes our deep dive into the Skinwalker legend. I've told you what I know, what I found in dozens of sources, from scientific articles to anonymous Reddit posts. Whether to believe or not, that's for you to decide. But let me give you one piece of advice, free of charge. If you ever find yourself in the forests of Arizona or New Mexico, if you're driving on a deserted road late at night, if you feel like opening the window and enjoying the cool desert air, don't whistle. Just don't whistle. Because there are things in the darkness that listen and wait. And if they hear you, they might answer. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel. There are many more stories ahead that won't let you sleep at night. And write in the comments, have you ever seen something you couldn't explain? Something that looked almost human, but not quite? I read all comments. Until next time, and good luck to all of us.